All right, guys, we're getting closer. I am convinced that we are going to be the October surprise because I am telling you things are developing on the Kamala front in a very big way. And I want to say this, I feel it in my soul, in my spirit, that this woman is an operative, that she was selected and that she was groomed by government agencies. I'm comfortable saying that publicly. I hope Kamala comes out and sues me because that would afford us discovery so we can get answers to many questions that we have. She would have to prove that what I was saying was untrue, thanks to strong defamation laws. I've been receiving, by the way, as of late, a ton of emails about Tim Walz as well, Kamala's VP pick, a suspicious VP pick, because who exactly picked him? Absolutely no one out there thinks that it was Kamala herself that said, yeah, give me the governor of Minnesota, huh? Who is he? What do they have on Tim Walz, if anything? Today, we're going to take a brief look into some of the rumors that have been circulating about him. So let's immediately get started. Welcome back to Candace. All right, so right at the top, in case you guys missed the update on Instagram, yesterday, obviously, we covered the article that was written by former Japan Times editor Yoichi Shimatsu, who claims that he ran the same circles as Kamala Harris in Berkeley, personally hates her, made that very clear, hates her mother, who he claims was a part of the MKUltra program. Now, we did not speak much or at length about the MKUltra program. We have very much on this show. For those of you that are new to listening to this podcast, it is an important program for you to familiarize yourself with, because you do have to become awakened to how tremendously evil our government is, that they engaged in this long period of being quite obsessed with how to brainwash people. And I'm talking brainwash individuals. They were obsessed with being able to delete memories from their brains and being able to insert memories into their brains. Really terrifying stories of people that they were able to convince to commit crimes, people that you thought, when you learned about all these serial killers, oh my gosh, Netflix telling you about serial killers, this must be the story. A lot of these people were government operatives. I mean, I would offer a guess that the concept of a serial killer came out of government operatives. I truly believe government programs like MKUltra and the Charles Manson murders is a great starting point. It's why I say you have to read that book, Chaos, because it deeply dives into the MKUltra program, but also makes you aware of the plausibility of a mass psychosis. That's why that book is just so incredible, because it was the Charles Manson murders that ended the hippies generation. And I want to be clear, the hippies generation, they thought like, oh, we just were doing this. No, that too was a government operation. They flooded the streets with LSD. They were even slipping LSD because that was their drug of choice. They thought that LSD would provide the means to brainwash people, and that was proven successful with Charles Manson's little hippie commune because he was an operative for them. And they were obsessed with getting people on LSD. I believe the reasons for that was because they wanted to crush Christianity in this country. And what better way to do that than via the sexual revolution? Everybody's sleeping with everybody, living in a commune, sex, love, rock and roll. The music is adding to that. Music, it's real frequencies. It makes you feel a certain way. Certain bands were involved in this program. It's very clear that there are a lot of government agents that are in Hollywood. Always has been the circumstance. So they're trying to tell you that's all conspiracy, it's all crazy. Guys, read the government documents. They are declassified. Learn the truth about the Charles Manson murders. Fully just be willing to confront how evil your government is. And it wasn't just LSD, by the way, that was being used as a mechanism to control people and to brainwash them. It was also sexual assault. They wanted to experiment with whether or not they could brainwash people via sexual assault. So you can look this up, by the way. It's so abundantly obvious and true that even Wikipedia shares that. Basic information about the MKUltra program, and it's really shocking to see how many people are on that list. Trust nothing when Netflix is presenting to you a deep story about somebody, oh, let me tell you the truth about Jeffrey Dahmer. I have my own suspicions that he too was somebody that was a part of a government program. Anyways, we're not going to get lost on that. The point is that the government is interested, has always been interested in how to brainwash the masses, how to brainwash individuals. And this is something that I have been rather obsessed with this year, learning talking about various psychoses. I think most people are joining this program now because we're realizing that COVID, we got to really just see a mass psychoses implemented before our very eyes. Some people who are listening to this podcast fell victim to it. And by the way, that is understandable. It's totally understandable. You have to forgive yourselves because these people are way ahead of the ball. They know how to do it. They know how to use the media. They know how to use repetition. They know how to use gaslighting. Sigmund Freud being the father of these techniques. They are way advanced. But you guys, we are all kind of catching up to this. And there is just something about this man, this journalist, Yoichi, coming out and saying that Kamala Harris's mother was a part of this program that just makes perfect sense. Claiming that Kamala Harris, in that same piece, was previously married to a British-Canadian guy and basically used her connections within the deep state to virtually delete this from the record in preparation for this run. That just passes the sniff test for me. We did our due diligence on that very quickly, and we came across what we were clear was a potential record between a Kamala D. Harris and a Philip D. Henderson that we found in Reno. Now, we were supposed to receive that record today from the recorder's office. It said 24 hours after we paid for it. We still have not yet received it. That's why we're running a bit late. We just kept refreshing. It's been more than 24 hours. However, we do feel that we can safely debunk this one because upon further digging, we found a different Kamala D. Harris that has a different middle name. And I think that is the one that married Philip D. Harris. So if you've been sending us information on that, please refocus your attention, refocus your research on trying to find a record of the marriage, which may exist. We don't know if the person's name is Philip. We're trying to find a previous marriage of Kamala, which existed in maybe the UK or in Canada. He says that it was in the society page in Canada. Somebody is collecting newspapers. I've had some emails of people that say that they recall this. They don't have it. We need more than that, and we are still awaiting a response from Yoichi. I feel in my gut he is going to respond, that he will get around to it. Even though I believe he currently lives in Hong Kong, we were able to get his actual email. But there's something else here that I would like to say regarding Donald Harris, Kamala's father. I also feel certain that Donald Harris is completely lying about his identity. Due to the communication that we are having right now in the background with people who would know this as a fact. People that we're not willing or able to discuss today, but we are going to as we collect more information. I do feel that we will be able to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt before we get to the election that my instincts, that Grandma Beryl, and great-grandma Christiana Brown, that Iris Finnegan, that the women that were pictured in the photos in Kamala's book, The Truths We Hold, my instincts are going to be proven correct, that these are not her biological grandparents, that yes, of course, these women did in fact exist. That's the best way to tell a lie, is to include some truths in there. You want to do two truths, one lie. I've always believed these women existed. There's no doubt of that. And I believe that Donald Harris was exposed to these women. There's no doubt about that in my mind either. But I fully believe that these women were the help. That is just the only thing that makes sense. By the way, a ton of you guys have communicated to me that Snopes has debunked our Grandma Beryl theory by finding the true Beryl death certificate, which shows that Beryl died in 1995. I'm showing you that death certificate. I just also want to be clear. I don't know if you've skipped episodes. We showed this death certificate on the show first. We highlighted it as possible that this could be a Beryl. But we deemed it unlikely, given the fact, and let's pull it back up, that the person who signed off on it, we said, we couldn't identify as the member of the family, Douglas Finnegan. We still, after having spoken to Kamala's family, cannot identify who that is that signed this death certificate. And we also deemed it unlikely because if you look at the cause of death, it says bed sores. Okay, so Donald Harris, a wealthy professor who traveled the world, in my mind, I said he wouldn't allow his mother to die from not being rolled over in 1995, but I digress. If they are verifying, as Snopes has, that this is in fact the correct Beryl that is pictured there, then this only further confirms my suspicion that the woman was not the wealthy descendant of previous slave owners who received what would have been millions of dollars because they handed over their slaves. You got paid for their slaves, rather, by the British government when they abolished it. Yeah, that kind of doesn't make sense to me. Just died of bed sores. Then there's this, okay? We were able to determine that a woman who went by Beryl or Christie, we keep seeing those two names together, applied for a housekeeping position in 1975. This was in the Kingston Gleaner. Employment wanted a household female. Experienced recommended women live in or out seek employment as housekeeper, cook, laundress, days worker, nursemaid, Beryl or Christie. Has Snopes yet worked to debunk our assertion that Christiana Brown, the one that is shown in Donald Harris's essay, this woman, may in fact have been a laundress who identified herself as a laundress in a case related to election fraud in Jamaica? Are they too busy to look into that? Are we supposed to still pretend that a worldly political woman who owned and operated dry goods stores and supported local politicians and spoke every day about trade and taught Donald trade, as he asserted throughout his piece, would describe herself as a mere laundress? Listen, like I said, some people who we are speaking to who would know for a fact whether or not what I was saying was true or false are making us feel certain that we are barking up the right tree and they are helping in this investigation. And so we are going to stick with it. Something is just not right about Donald Harris. It's not right when relatives are saying they've never met his mom. Relatives that are close to him are saying they've never met his mom. None of this makes any sense. I believe that Kamala is lying about her genealogy, and I believe the state is helping her to do that, just as Yoichi is asserting. I believe there is a collaborative effort here behind the scenes. And my gut sends me that way because, I mean, I just put myself in her situation. If I had a person with a platform of my size out there saying, Candace is lying about the fact that her grandma was born and raised between St. Thomas and Tortola and grew up on the island, and like that her grandma is black, I would be first and foremost livid because of how close I was to my grandma, okay? Like raised in her house during my formative years. My grandmother is Caribbean. Like I would be in 5 seconds out there being like, who are you to tell me that my grandmother is not black, to tell me that my grandmother did not grow up on the island, to tell me that my grandmother didn't have a thick Caribbean accent. And first and foremost, I used to correct my grandma. She'd say, throw it away. I said, grandma, it's throw. It's throw, grandma. Throw it away. No, grandma, it's throw, grandma. When I was a little kid, she'd be like, out the light. I'd be like, grandma, we don't say out the light. It's turn the lights off, grandma. There's just no way that I would just be mum, only just one picture of her in a book, and then like, I'm not even going to answer any questions about my heritage. Something is wrong. We all feel it. She is lying about her genealogy. And the person that I'm in communication with, like I said, we're collaborating right now, who is being very forthcoming with information, told me that in Jamaica, there was this huge importation of a lot of Chinese and Jewish communists, or rather people who purported that they were fleeing communism, who then settled in Jamaica, is what I should say, right? So they get there in Jamaica, and I find that to be of great interest to me because America dealt with a similar influx of a bunch of immigrants who purported to be fleeing communism in Russia, who didn't actually flee communism. They brought it to America. Hence McCarthy, Senator McCarthy, he was a hero. He was telling the truth. You learned that wrong in your history books. Communists are very good at assuming different identities. They are gypsies. And I remain extremely bothered by the fact that Kamala just didn't mention the fact that she had all these white relatives that she was extremely close to anywhere. She just rinsed it completely from her background and her history. I find that to be a severe lie by omission. Here's the thing. I know we're not supposed to go down in conspiracy land. I just live there permanently because I think conspiracy land is gut land, and we are just all coming to terms with the fact that something is wrong. There is too much synergy between what is happening in France, Emmanuel Macron, his shady background, his wife, who is definitively born a man, Okay. Him also being raised by his grandparents, shady, broken family structure, didn't really know his parents growing up, but his grandma was there and raised. It's all so related. The Barack Obama story follows the Emmanuel Macron story, follows the Kamala Harris story. How are they all growing up with such a similar non-existence? Just a non-existence, right? Like it doesn't make any sense that this many people who are being put into positions of power have such shady upbringings. It's not that difficult to say, this is my mom and this is my dad, and they raised me in some capacity. Also, remember yesterday when I said that there was virtually no information? They tried to wipe the information that Barack Obama lived for like 8 to 10 years, first 10 years of his life in Indonesia. And then like that one reporter found the one pamphlet that showed that he went by Barry Soetoro. And he also went by Barry Soetoro in college. Like his name was Barry Soetoro. And there was very little information available about Lolo Soetoro, very few pictures available about Lolo Soetoro, his stepdad. Well, I didn't realize that Judge Joe Brown, man, that judge is coming with the receipts, actually sat down in an interview with Scoon TV and called out Lolo Soetoro. He claims that he was a CIA operative. Take a listen.
Well, there are pictures of Bush with his arm around 8-year-old Barack Obama because his stepdaddy, adopted daddy, Lolo Soetoro, had done a lifetime worth of business with the Bushes.
Wow.
Uncle George Herbert Walker, after whom George Herbert Walker Bush, Bush 1 president, was named, founded Halliburton in 1946 in Oklahoma. And Lolo Soetoro had been international executive vice president for Standard Oil.
There was talk of him being a CIA asset.
Well,
in
yeah,
Indonesia.
see, he ran the death squads for the Indonesian army. On his own call, anyone could be assassinated. So when George Herbert Walker Bush became head of the CIA under the Ford administration, he just got with his old buddy in the oil business, Lolo Soetoro, and pulled off the hits. See, Barack's grandmother has been acknowledged as being the woman that operated the channels through which CIA money went to the Southwest Pacific. So she introduced her daughter, who had just had Barack, to Lolo Soetoro, and they got married, and Lolo Soetoro adopted Barack Obama. The name was changed to Barry Soetoro. Now, when he went to high school in Hawaii, I know about that high school. I almost sent my oldest son to it. I could afford it, but I didn't think he deserved it. 20 years ago, the tuition was $95,000 a year, not including room and board. When Obama went there, I've talked to 2 of his classmates. They independently state that the tuition, not including room and board, was $45,000. Now, Business Insider reports his income for 2017 at over $200 million net. That's after taxes, deductions, write-offs. For this last year, 2018, they reported it as $570+ million. And that's after all deductions, tax, right? Trump doesn't make that net. I mean, even some of the richest people in America don't make that. Why? Because when his stepdaddy died, he was one of the 10, 15 richest men on earth. And he left everything in a trust fund operated out of Indonesia, so the American government can't touch it. That makes Barack Obama 1/3 beneficiary for the assets of one of the 10, 15 richest men on earth. See, so we got a game run on us. So, you know that little thing that Bush W does when he gets with Michelle, they giggle and he gives her candy. The inside thing is that's supposed to be the same kind of candy he used to give to her husband when he was 6, 7, 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
All I'm saying is that when you hear the truth, it just hits differently. And it's the only thing that makes sense because we're looking around and we're going, where are these people coming from? Like it feels like they're just being minted as leaders. I mean, Kamala Harris didn't even win. They just moved Joe Biden aside and said, here you go, vote for Kamala. I mean, that's completely crazy. If this is supposed to be a democracy, right? If we're supposed to be having this system in which any person can be president of the United States, why does it only feel as though people that are deeply connected in a web of politics are the ones that do become presidents of the United States? Why does it always feel that it's somebody who has a shady upbringing, okay, someone like Barack Obama, who spends time on an island, very likely was a part of a military program, people like the Bush family, like the Clinton family? Why does it feel as though we don't have the system that we purport to have? Something is very wrong. I believe these individuals are being bred. I think a lot of these people also are being selected after they are caught committing crimes, because then they know that they can be controlled. And when I say who is controlling them, I'm referring to the CIA. And I think that everyone's waking up to it right now. And so we got to acknowledge it. We have to speak about it. And it's the only way that we're going to be able to come up with a conclusion. I also want to now speak about what's going on with Tim Walz. I was reticent to speak about this, but I think there's been too much rumbling about it, and it's time to. First, I want to throw it to one of our sponsors, because the incompetence of the Biden-Harris administration is something that we cannot handle as a country for another 4 years. It's why many Americans have been buying tangible assets, such as precious metals like gold and silver. I've teamed up with a great company who's made buying metals very easy, transparent, and simple, and that company is Goldco. They're a huge supporter of the show, and they're very good at what they do. So if you're interested in buying precious metals, or you just want to learn about how they can help you, visit CandaceLikesGold.com. You won't forget that domain name. Right now, you can get a free 2025 gold and silver kit, jam-packed with critical information about the challenges our economy faces and how precious metals could be a possible solution. For my listeners, you could also qualify for up to a 10% instant match in bonus silver. It's a great deal. So go to CandaceLikesGold.com to learn more. Again, that's CandaceLikesGold.com. All right, let's talk about this mysterious case of Kamala's running partner, Tim Walz. Now, so many of you guys have emailed us, why aren't you covering this budding story? Why aren't you speaking about this? And the answer is because the allegations are severe. We want to be cautious, because there is also a chance that it's a trap. That's a perfectly laid trap that's being laid for us just ahead of the election, so they can go, oh, look, it's QAnon people, and they said this, and there was no truth to this. And you just have to be careful this close to an election. You want to make sure that anything that you're reporting on is fact-based, or at least has legs to it. So you can go, okay, we're not certain for sure. And regarding Tim Walz, parking aside any allegations, I do want to say this. He just gives me the heebie-jeebies. You guys know the everybody knows what the heebie-jeebies are. Women, we know what the heebie-jeebies are. Okay, it's a spiritual condition that women have. You can't explain it. You come across someone, you just go, Don't trust it. And there's no words, like you don't know, but you know. Look at somebody just like, I don't have any facts, but I know. I just know. I don't know, but I know. That's the heebie-jeebies. That's how the heebie-jeebies work. It's just a thing, a vibe that goes around. What we do know for certain regarding Tim Walz is that he has a loose relationship, I would say, with the truth. I mean, it was back in a radio interview in 2019. He claimed that he was in Hong Kong on the day of the Tiananmen Square massacre. He wasn't. And they said, oopsie, I got my timeline mixed up. Like, really? I feel like that's not something you forget. Like, I was there 9/11 at the World Trade Center. Oh, actually, I was a little confused. I was a couple of weeks later, and I was actually not even in New York. Huh? Then there was the Harris campaign circulating a clip on X where he was speaking about gun violence. And he said, we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at. And he heavily suggested that he was therefore in a combat zone, weapons I carried in war. And it turned out that that just wasn't true. According to the Nebraska Army National Guard, he enlisted in April of 1981, just 2 days after his 17th birthday. And he entered service as an infantryman, completing a 12-week Army infantry basic training course before graduating from high school. In 1996, he transferred to the Minnesota Army National Guard. In 2003, he was deployed to Italy, which was just like a support position of the active military forces. He was never actually put in the combat zone himself, which explains why he cannot even load a shotgun. I can't believe he did this, had cameras following him. He's just going to show he's a man. And we're supposed to believe he's like some war vet and he's going to go shoot some pheasant. And unfortunately, just couldn't load a shotgun. I mean, take a look at this. It's just incredible.
Yeah. That's my theory.
And it never fits quite right.
Never fits quite right. Just not quite right. How do you give it back?
Governor, what kind of gun is it?
This is a Beretta A400. I bought it when I was shooting a lot of trap because it has a kind of their patented thing, a kickoff. So when you get old, it doesn't hurt your shoulder as much.
I think that was it was supposed to be designed as some press that was going to bring Republican voters to him, and it did the exact opposite. Let me tell you, the red-blooded conservatives will not be voting for him based on that clip of him being completely unable to load a shotgun despite not being in a combat zone. Anyways, the allegations that most people have been reluctant to cover. There's no big conspiracy going on here. We're just waiting for more proof. They are, of course, way more serious than whether or not he was in a combat zone. Look, here's the thing that I'll say. Stereotypes. I like them. I believe in them. I don't believe stereotypes come from nowhere. I think it's fine for us to admit, like, hey, if you had to pick like the greatest driver in America, you wouldn't be like, give me the Asian woman, right? I think that's fair. I think it's fair. There are Asian stereotypes, Black people stereotypes. If you're like, hey, I really want to get my accounting done, taxes done, like you're not going to be like, give me the female Black girl. I don't know. Of course, I'm not saying you can't be like brilliant. My sister's an accountant and she's really good at math. But I'm saying if you just had to like quickly pick someone in a room based on stereotypes, you're like, okay. And there are straight man stereotypes and there's homosexual man stereotypes. And I would just say, like, as a straight man stereotype off the bat, I don't think that straight men, when they are employed at schools, like start clubs for homosexuals. Like, I just don't think that that's something that happens. And Tim Walz did that. And the NPR like kind of came out with this story and really tried to sell it to Americans by writing about a guy named Jacob Rattan, who apparently was one of the students at the school that Tim Walz went through. I'm going to just read this to you directly. Taunts and threats escalated as rumors about Jacob Rattan's sexual orientation swirled around his southern Minnesota high school during his senior year in 1999. Like right there, I was kind of like, really? Like in the 90s, like taunts and threats for being gay. It's giving the Laramie Project vibes, which is like, we're not being told the truth. Whatever. Let's just take this at face value. It goes on to say someone chalked a slur on his driveway in giant letters. Like, was I living in a different 1999 existence? Like, I feel like everybody in the 90s just like got along. Like nobody was writing like gay slurs on somebody's driveway in chalk, but whatever sells papers, I guess. His mother recalled being horrified by anonymous mail that arrived at their house. Like people were just this obsessed with the idea that someone might be gay in 1999. They were just like chalking up his driveway. After the teenager found his car window smashed in the high school parking lot, this feels like a movie, he told officials at Mankato West High School that he intended to come out of the closet and sought their support to start a gay-straight alliance club. The principal made an unconventional decision in the choice of a faculty advisor for the club, which the high school had never had before in this relatively conservative city. Tim Walz, a geography teacher who was also a football coach, Mr. Walz readily agreed, and the choice came as a relief to Mr. Rattan. So he was selected and agreed that he would help start this club with a kid who apparently, for whatever reason, people were chalking his driveway and smashing in his car because he might be gay. I don't know, doesn't pass the vibe check, but that's what they're saying is true. Okay, so there has been a person who is deeming themselves to be a whistleblower who has been going around to various people. It made its way to me as well, claiming that he was claiming that he's a student that was essentially groomed by Tim Walz and that he will be taking further action. He's been, and again, this could be a person who's just in the mix saying stuff, claiming that he was in some way abused by Tim Walz. And I think it's worth discussing because the rumor mill has gotten big enough. Again, I don't have any concrete proof. For me personally, I would need a person's name to verify that they actually lived to and went to the same school. He claims that he's going to be forthcoming with that. I do a lot of work with Ian Carroll. He is the TikToker, and he went to suss this out like even more. Like he went to fish out the details of this even more by contacting the whistleblower and had a 42-minute discussion with him on the phone, which he felt that the person who came forward was being entirely legitimate, as well as others in the movement who felt that he was being legitimate. But people can be great performers. Anyways, I will allow you to listen to what Ian Carroll concluded after his phone call with the alleged whistleblower. Take a listen.
Today, I had a 40-minute phone call with what sounded an awful lot like a genuine whistleblower. This is the phone call. There was no weird, breaks in character. There was no weird, the vibe I can be fooled. I'm no ultimate judge of character. I'm not perfect. I'm also not some professional journalist or anything. But my judgment of what I heard and what I asked and what was said to me it sounded like it was a real story, and the details seemed to line up not only with what else had been said, but also with what I could corroborate about like where Tim Walz was at that time and what he was doing at that time, and who knows. And so basically, here's where we're at. Whistleblower is seeking a legal course of action. Not going to say more about that, but allegedly told me that they are not seeking any kind of payout, that they're seeking only reimbursement for court fees, and basically peace of mind to not have to see Tim Walz on screen on the, in the White House for 4 years. And Whistleblower knows of several other people that experienced the same or similar types of abuse. Whistleblower says they have lots of proof. Allegedly, there is a cache of journals and letters, just documents from the time that help corroborate the story. And they're allegedly stashed where multiple of these people have access to them. And allegedly, they feel comfortable sending photos of some of those documents that won't give away their identity yet, but will at least help to corroborate the story, allegedly. Allegedly, there's also more actions being taken behind the scenes that I'm not going to talk about right now. All I'm going to say is that it could all be fake. There's no proof of anything yet, and you should treat it as such. Unconfirmed, uncorroborated internet claims. But there might be something there.
So look, we need concrete evidence in my view, and that's why I'm not going to show the letter that the whistleblower wrote to the public about what happened. Now, he is describing specific body parts with tattoos. Like I said, he could just be an incredible performer, so we should just be very fair, because with all matters, especially pertaining to sexual assault, like if someone just made a claim against me, I would not want somebody to not do the due diligence to corroborate that claim before they introduce it to the public. But like I said, everyone's speaking about it. We're getting emails about it. So I also don't want to treat you guys like you're so dumb that you're like, Candace, why aren't you covering this? Like, obviously it's happening. I want you to know that we're following it. But until there's a little more to bite, I don't feel confident. And look, he says in the next coming days, he's going to come out with much more. He's contacting authorities, et cetera, et cetera. We are gathering that evidence, and we will be able to hit the go button when and if that moment comes. But I feel like we should verify first before we trust somebody that is anonymous. So I also am interested, by the way, in what the media rushes to cover and what they don't cover. Like if a woman says like Trump sneezed on them, they're like, it's 100% true. Or like, we are just more responsible in general. We don't do the same thing, and their media is just like ignoring it entirely. Even when there is proof, like they could have somebody with full proof. Like Hunter Biden had a whole laptop. It was him smoking the crack pipes. It was literally, they were like, don't believe your own eyes. That's what you got to appreciate about the left. They really are something. Anyways, one thing that is interesting that I want to point out is that part of the allegations, this person asserted that Tim Walz took him to a concert. Tim and his wife have offered up that they did in fact take students to concerts. So I find that to be weird in general, like hanging out with your teacher at a concert. Maybe I'm weird, maybe I'm old fashioned. I don't even like seeing my teacher at the grocery store. Like that feels inappropriate. Like if you bump into them outside of school, I'm like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here, Mrs. Balistreri? I don't know. It just feels very wrong to me. So anyways, I'm going to leave that right there. Tell you guys a little bit about Beam. Lately, my family and I have been doing a lot of overseas traveling. And let me tell you, one thing that remains constant no matter where I am is the importance of sleep, especially when you're jet lagged, as I have been. Sleep is our foundation. It fuels our energy, sharpens our minds, and keeps us ready to tackle the challenges of the day. And that is where Beam Dream comes in. It is not just another supplement. It's a game changer. It's formulated with natural ingredients. Beam helps you drift into a peaceful sleep, so you wake up refreshed and ready to seize the day without the grogginess of other sleep meds. All you need to do is mix Beam into hot water or milk. You froth it and you can enjoy it before bed. Right now, my listeners will get a special discount on their science-backed healthy hot cocoa for sleep with no added sugar. So make sleep a priority and try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/Candace and use code Candace at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/Candace and use code Candace for up to 40% off. Better sleep has never tasted better. All right, now we got to get to some of these clips that I missed while I was in Tokyo. I've been dying to get to this. I'm so excited. I obviously heard that Kamala appeared on the Call Her Daddy podcast. Now, I want to be clear. If you are a listener of the Candace Owen podcast, we can be pretty damn sure that you are not a listener of the Call Her Daddy podcast. Probably a lot of you had not even heard of it. It is a big podcast. There's no question about it. But I would say that if you identify as a conservative, it is probably not in your top 10. So first and foremost, let's just let Kamala explain. Is really the first question that Alex Cooper, who is the host of Call Her Daddy, asked was, why did you want to come on this podcast of all the podcasts? And that's a great question. Take it away, Kamala.
I'm curious, like, you don't do too many long form interviews. What made you want to do Call Her Daddy today?
Well, I think you and your listeners have really got this thing right, which is one of the best ways to communicate with people is to be real, and to talk about the things that people really care about. I mean, what I love about what you do is that your voice in your show is really about your listeners. And I think especially now, this is a moment in the country and in life where people really want to know they're seen and heard and that they're part of a community, that they're not out there alone. And so I'm really glad to be with you.
That's a lot of words and a lot of euphemisms to describe the community that she's referring to. For better or worse, what it is it's a sex-themed podcast. There's really no way that you can talk about Call Her Daddy without saying that it's women that get together and talk about sex. I mean, even when they launched this podcast, for clarity, Alex Cooper, that host, just turned 30 years old. She launched it with another girl. Then her and that girl had a falling out. And really, they just kind of keep this flow of women that come on to talk about their failed relationships, talk about their sex moves. And I'm going to show you another clip, by the way. If you are young, I do want you to just turn this off for 2 minutes because we have cleaned it up as much as we can and it still offends my ears so much. But it's important that I show this to you because I want you to have a realistic understanding of the podcast that this team, the presidential candidate, sat down and said, yes, let's do this podcast. To be clear, when it launched, they launched by, among other things, they started a blowjob move that was referred to as the Gluck Gluck 9000. Just so you understand how graphic this podcast can get. She has hosted various porn stars to speak about their favorite positions. One such porn star is Lana Rhoades. I'm going to let you listen to this. Again, we have cleaned this up as much as we can, and it still offends me. So if you just don't want to hear the next minute, you can turn down the volume, and I recommend that you do because that's what I would do. I am really doing this as a journalistic endeavor because it's important to understand who Kamala Harris is. When she gave you that word salad about the community of Call Her Daddy, this is what she's referring to. Take a listen.
What are your go-to favorite sex positions?
I am so basic. I love missionary.
I love missionary too.
I
think it's great.
It's the
I think
best.
it's great.
It feels the best for me, like with Mike at least. One thing that's interesting that I just started like doing with him that I never did with anyone else is I said that we like missionary. So like whenever he's on top, I'll like, and he's like going and now I'll like pull him in like even harder just so it goes like all the way like deep.
Are you pulling like
hard.
his hips?
Yeah, his hips.
How?
Just slamming it in.
And it's like you can't get in and hard enough. Like you're like, I literally want you inside
enough. Seriously, it's offending me. It is genuinely offending me. Okay. And that, by the way, in her discussion with Lana Rhoades, that was the most PG portion. Even the description on YouTube, I'm just amazed. Like I'm not allowed to make money on YouTube. And it's just amazing to me what is on YouTube. The description in the box on YouTube says Alex and former porn star Lana Rhoades discuss, I'm not going to read this, bleep, 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 your man, bleep, while he is on all fours, different types of, and I'm giving the nice word here, testicles, schoolgirl role play, and the strangest role play that Lana proposed to a boyfriend and got turned down. Okay, so this is the Call Her Daddy podcast. Now, when the Call Her Daddy podcast is trying to be, I guess, cleaner and funnier, they host people like Megan Fox, who talks about like drinking the blood of the person that she loves. She's done that. She speaks about that. And she just kind of gives advice to women and speaks about all the work that she has done to her face. Here's Megan Fox on the Call Her Daddy podcast.
When I had to go in for this set, I was like, look, if you're going to put me to sleep, if I'm going to be sick for 2 months from the general anesthesia, if I'm going to go through, because I'm not fully ever asleep. So my soul's like fighting on the surgical table to wake up. It's a very traumatizing experience for me. I was like, I better wake up with the biggest boobs you can fit in my body. And that is what he said he did. And they're not even that big. They're a 32D, which is not that big. They just look big on my body because my body's tiny.
Right.
But if he could have gone bigger, I would have had him go bigger because I don't like surgery. And the fact that I had to do it, I was like, I want a reward for the suffering I have to go through. I don't want to wake up with a full B cup. There's no point in that. I'm not doing it.
Right. You want titties.
I wanted titties. I said, I don't care what's on trend. Give me 1990s stripper titties. That's what I want. And he did it.
Girl, you look amazing.
Thank you.
Kamala's community. It's amazing. That's Kamala's community. You just listen to her explain this community is so great. Like she's just referring to a community of hoes. Like that's what she's referring to. And by the way, on that note, I do want to say that it was a smart decision for her to go on this podcast. There's no doubt about that, because you are dealing with women. Now you can really understand why she took the conversation about abortion and how much it is absolute BS, right? For these women who opine all the time when they're speaking about them, it's like, my body, my choice. And they're using these arguments like, well, what if an 8-year-old gets raped? Okay, these are the women that we're speaking about that are having the abortions, okay? They're having these abortions because they openly sleep with tons of guys. And what actually happens is crazy. I learned this, and I'll talk about the birds and the bees. If you are having a bunch of partners, there is a chance that you are going to get pregnant. And there's going to be a chance that the person that got you pregnant doesn't want to have a baby with you, because he views you as a dump, you know what I mean? As like everybody's been with you and they don't want to commit with you. And so that's the real reason. People aren't going to tell you, that's the real reason these women fight tooth and nail for abortion. It's because they're hoes, right? And I'm not saying everyone. There are circumstances where there are people that are in committed relationships, and I don't want to paint a broad brush, because there are people also who have had abortions, I think, when they were young, who were legitimately duped to believe that it was a clump of cells. When I was pro-choice, I thought that it was just a clump of cells because I learned it in my health class. And I think those women who get abortions have a lot of regret, and they feel like they're not allowed to change their minds, and they are. I want those women to know you can have been pro-choice, and you would have the greatest testimony if you wanted to then become pro-life because you have more information. I want to welcome you to that. I don't want to make you feel excluded and like you have to stay pro-choice for the rest of your life and listen to podcasts like this. But an overwhelming majority of the women who fight in the way that they do for abortion are women that listen to this kind of a podcast and live their lives in this same disgusting way, and think that it's cool, like a symbol of how cool and open they are when they speak about their bodies and how they edit their bodies trying to stay young. Tremendously unhappy women, and they need abortion to know that there's a way out from their responsibility. So it makes perfect sense that Kamala and Alex Cooper discussed abortion in the way that they did. Take a listen.
I want to pose this question more to you and the Daddy Gang, but one of the biggest conversations in this year's election revolves around a woman's body.
Yep.
I want to take a moment, and can we try to think of any law that gives the government the power to make a decision.
I know what you're going to ask.
About a man's body.
No.
Is there any law?
No. It's no.
Just dumb hoes saying no, not knowing anything about the draft. And it should alarm you that a woman who is actually asking for power over the military has no idea that the draft exists. No, none. Zero. Now go die in Iraq. Go die in Israel. Go die in Ukraine. I can't stand this. I just hate, like, the basic BITCH movement, like the basic conversations. It's the worst stereotype of women that we have nothing to offer, but like, oh, I gotta get my boobs done. And they were like, I was like, give me the biggest thing, like the biggest thing you could possibly give me. I want them so big. I'm like, I'm gonna go under because I like my soul is floating. Like that's them being religious. Like when I'm under a general anesthetic and like I'm getting like the biggest boobs ever, my soul is just so powerful that it floats to the top. And so I'm like, doctor, if I'm gonna do this, and my soul is going to be floating above me and me looking down, give me the biggest boobs you can possibly give me. And he did. Yeah, that's me. That's my connection to God. It makes me sick. This is literally what we're doing. I can't stand this version of what it means to be a woman. And I am so happy to have made a pivot away from that and to recognize when I see that, like I want nothing to do with it. It is just, it further commits me to never casting a ballot ever for women who speak in the way that these two women just spoke about abortion, after a long list of women coming on and talking about their very, very many partners and how they like to get down with their very many partners. Anyways, parking that aside, let's also discuss the fact that Kamala, while I was in Tokyo, rolled out a new accent. I said no. Someone texted me, they said, Candace, she rolled out a new accent. I said, no, she did not. No, she didn't. I don't believe these people. I said, shut up right now. Shut up your face right now. And they didn't. They presented evidence that she rolled out a new accent. She met up with Stephen Colbert, and out of nowhere, she decided to be Jamaican. Take a listen.
Luxury that people
and
are
it's
using.
crude. Have you no empathy, man?
Yes.
You know, for the suffering of other people. Have you no sense of purpose?
Okay. Have you no empathy, man? You know, I just, like, what is happening here? Tell me she is not the Manchurian candidate. I don't even know what triggered her there. I don't even know what word he said that triggered her and made her go into, like, the Jamaican personality, as if, yes, it is a fact. Her dad has a Jamaican accent, and it is a real Jamaican accent. You do not inherit that accent. Like I said, my grandmother spoke in a very thick Caribbean accent. I just spent my life correcting her. Like, we were like little tots. No, Grandma, no, it's not throw it away, it's throw. Say the H. My dad does not have a Caribbean accent because he did not grow up on the island. You can't just drop a Caribbean accent. Least of all, after you just premiered a Spanish accent. Roll the clip.
I love you back.
I love you back. And then the other Spanish accent. Roll the clip.
Well, first of all, thank you for the question, and I hope your family is okay and your home is okay.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is why the Spanish people are telling me that they call her Kamala, okay? This is, I think, what's happening. You can't just be Latina after being Jamaican, after being black. There's a black scent. Let's hear the black scent.
Everywhere I go, I tell people, look, you may not be a union member. You better thank a union member. For the 5-day work week, you better thank a union member for sick leave. You better thank a union member for paid leave. You better thank a union member for vacation time.
You better thank. I don't know how to say better anymore. You better thank. Okay, you better thank a union worker. When you see a union worker, you better thank. You better thank about all my other accents too, man. Come on, man. What's going on, man? Okay, out the light, throw it away. I can't keep up. I really cannot keep up with so many accents that this woman just keeps dropping. It's not okay. It is just simply not okay. And we collectively must come together and deem this to be the most un-okay dipping and diving out of various personalities that we've ever seen. When do we get to legally diagnose her with like multiple personality disorder? Like, when does that come? Media loves a good diagnosis. I want to diagnose Kamala Harris. And let me be clear, whoever did this meme, you won this year. Take a look.
Spanish, Haitian, Indian, Jamaican, black, white, Cuban, or Asian.
It says Kamala Harris filling out a job application. Like, that person wins the internet. Absolutely amazing. All of this to say, by the way, that she did go on the Breakfast Club yesterday, as we were anticipating. I cared about one thing. I knew he was going to bring up Janet Jackson. I was just like, if she says one word about Janet Jackson, we riot. Play the clip.
Quick question. There's a rumor that Janet Jackson is mad at you because you prosecuted her brother, the late, great Michael Jackson. That's on the internet. Clear that up for people.
That's just not true.
I know.
Yeah. On either count.
She's not mad at you?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I have not talked to her, but it's not true about her brother.
All right. She didn't say anything about Janet Jackson. She didn't say anything about Janet Jackson, but we're still not done going through her whole history because somebody tried to come after Janet Jackson. But that's what I was really watching for. And, she did all the typical stuff. It was the greatest softball interview I've ever seen. Disappointing in Charlemagne, genuinely. I will say this, at least when conservatives are on his show, he's respectful. So I will give him the credit that it's not like when he does in the rare moments that he has a conservative, he attacks them. I thought he was very fair to me when I was on. But this was it was unbelievably softball and just tried to make her look good and allow her to clear up things and give her an opportunity. But what's really funny is the media ran with the greatest interview she's ever given. but the internet felt very differently. I loved looking at the comments under the post after the Breakfast Club posted it. This is what they had to say on the internet. This, by the way, we're just giving you a screenshot of all the comments in a row, so we are not picking and choosing. This person writes, Charlemagne can now join the cast of The View. Cabby writes, whenever she says, I grew up in a middle class, I think of the SNL skit. Personal Reviews writes, 75K a year now feels like living off of 40K a year. As a journalist myself, I lost some respect for Charlemagne here. He wouldn't handle Trump with the same kid gloves. The only person I know to ask her hard questions was the brother on 60 Minutes. That was the best interview I've seen of her. Why does Charlotte talk crap about Harris with Andrew Schultz, but not to her face? ? Again, the next person writes, like my grandpa used to say, you can't piss on my leg and tell me it's raining. This person writes, came straight to the comments before it started. Ads ain't even done playing yet. This person writes, who else immediately went to the comment section? Charlemagne, you messed up in the first 3 years. Kamala, yes, we started on day one. This person writes, my rents increased almost 20% in the last 2 years. Groceries are sky high. Taxes went up, but my wages haven't kept up with the inflation. There is no middle class anymore. If anybody makes less than 50K a year, you don't see that because we are effed. So you get it. Like, it's not working. And like all of this damage control of trying to get the black vote back, it's just not going to work for Kamala. People are recognizing their circumstances. They already lived under Trump. So all of the, ooh, spooky Trump, if he becomes dictator, nobody's buying that. They were living well under Trump, right? And they have seen how their lives have declined under a Biden-Harris administration. And her pretending like she had nothing to do with it and things are going to get better if she becomes the president it's not working. And I'm proud of that. Like I said, it's like for the first time, I am proud to see Black people holding the line and not falling for the usual race banter and the tricks, and particularly Black men. Anyways, you guys, I'm going to go to your comments after we first just thank American Financing and remind you guys to contact them, because the economy has been a major burden on the average American, as we are seeing right now in those comments. The wages are flat, expenses are up, and it's very hard to manage to pay all the bills without grabbing credit cards. If you're a homeowner and you're frustrated with that cycle, you can make a 10-minute phone call, no obligation, to American Financing. Interest rates are coming down and are now in the low fives. So if you're constantly carrying over a credit card balance each and every month, the rate in the 20s, American Financing can show you how to put your hard-earned equity to work, and they can get you out of debt. Their salary-based mortgage consultants are saving their customers an average of $800 a month. And if you get started today, you may not even have to make next month's mortgage payment. So call today. The number is 800-795-1210. That's 800-795-1210. Or you can visit americanfinancing.net/Owens. That's americanfinancing.net/Owens. Also remind you guys, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. Hit subscribe on the Rumble channel if you have not already. We are on the race over here on YouTube back to 3 million subscribers, which I'm really proud of. Go over to Locals, cut over to Locals, and sign up to support the show, because we are not monetized here, but we love the freedom so much that we don't really care. We would rather be honest and not monetized and have to lie to stay monetized. That is the reality. Anyways, guys, we're going to cut over and read some of your comments, and you can do that over at Rumble. So we will see you over there. All right, ladies and gents, let's get ready to rumble. Let's see what you guys have for me today.